Anyways, we're going into the next phase of our program here, talking about the future of EV experiences, and we have some great people up here with some great ideas and thoughts, and we have a good moderator. So I'm going to introduce John. John can introduce his panel, and then we'll go from there. If you're on this side of the room and you feel comfortable to move over on this side of the room, just to let people come in. We ran into this the last session where people started showing up and they'd have to walk over people to find chairs. So if you're okay with that, thank you, and I'll hand it off to John, and we'll go from there.
Thank you, Steve. Wow. Deep voice. Okay. How y'all doing?
Great.
Oh, come on now. How y'all doing? Excellent. All right, so we're here to talk about the Olympic swim team. That's what we're here for. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. Electric vehicle and the electric vehicle experience, past, present, and future. For those of you who have seen me do moderation before, I'm going to play the same card. These fine gentlemen were kind enough to trust me. What that means is we don't actually have a pre-scripted set of questions. What we did is we set up some guardrails, and I'm going to be very clear to watch those guardrails, and we're going to moderate a discussion as if we were sitting in a bar in front of a fireplace, some executives just talking about where we're at, what are the challenges, how do we see them, how does the past inform the future, how does the present inform the future, and what does the ecosystem from where we each come from historically, and how does that give us our views. I'm going to let each of them introduce themselves, and then we're going to go from there. But before we start, FYI, we are not going to do Q&A. I'm sorry. If you want to meet with these fine gentlemen afterwards, you are more than welcome to. They will be here after the break, to the night, etc. There's no Q&A, so I'm just going to let you know that right up front. I'm going to go right to the end. But what I am going to do as a treat is we are going to ask you a question. So we're going to ask you a question, and what we're going to do is look for some answers, but we're going to do it at the very end. And the question is, what is your ideal future as it relates to EV? Now, it's a very broad question. As we go through our conversation, you'll start seeing us fill in blanks and gaps and holes. And what we would like for you to do is riff on that. And when we open it up at about 10 minutes before our close, I'm going to start offering up, what is your future? This is not a question. You're not asking them anything. You're going to make the comment. We're going to pass the mic around. And then the four of us will be available afterwards. We'll riff on that or later tonight. Okay? So again, no Q&A. I'm going to ask you, and then we're going to pass the mic around and you can comment on it. With that, I'm going to welcome each of the gentlemen to the stage, starting with Kyle. Kyle, please introduce yourself, tell you who you are, and then we'll kind of come down that way.
Hey guys, I'm going to try and use the mic. I might just speak loudly. I'm typically known for that anyways. So my name's Kyle Ammann. I'm the Director of EV Business Development for Parkopedia. And I'm probably going to spend a little bit of time talking about who Parkopedia is and really why we're here, because I'm pretty sure you know who Stellantis and Ford are. So Parkopedia, as our name suggests, we started in the parking industry. And about 15 years ago, we started aggregating all this parking data. So at this point, we are the largest aggregator of parking data. You're going to see us in your head units of your favorite OEMs, providing that data. Once we had all the data there, we then transformed it into more of a payment platform or our transactor, if you will. And that's kind of led into this whole new world of aggregating ecosystems, right? So once we're in there and we're doing payment coordination, a lot of the OEMs are asking us, hey, can you add these additional services? Can you add these different products? So at this point, we are now doing ecosystems for parking, obviously, charging for EVs, fueling, tolling, and we're looking at some additional ones in the future. So I'm big on ecosystems and the future that they're going to play within the EVs.
Excellent, thank you. Matus? Oh, wow, the OEMs won't share? Oh.
Hey, my name is Matus. I'm with Ford of Europe. I'm an engineering manager. My team and I are part of a global group that are responsible for EV backend services. So we are basically invisible to the customer, but very important as all of the Ford experiences are built upon that. And we're basically enabling the charging experience for all of our customers.
Thank you. Oh, I'm not using his microphone. So Ed Mussi, I'm with Stellantis, which if you don't know by now is the merger of Fiat Chrysler and Peugeot globally. We're the third largest automotive manufacturer now. I'm within the Software X organization, which is our software experience organization, which is our new, centralized experience for vehicles. My particular role, I'm global product management for V2X, which is vehicle integration with the grid and vehicle communications with the grid. So my team is responsible for developing those experiences on how do you charge, how do we interact with the grid, how do we interact with the home, and tie that to everyone's life.
Fantastic. All right, so everyone's still good with the rules? Excellent. All right, here we go. Buckle up. So we're going to talk a lot about education. We've actually spent almost a couple hours actually talking. It's not like we didn't have any pre-conversation. We did. We had a lot of fun and excitement. And so what I would love to do is offer Kyle the opportunity to share that first perspective that we just talked about, which was the car person doing more. What's the future like? And from there, we're going to riff them back and forth on us as we'll go forward. But go ahead and explain that kind of perspective and sort of why that is the idealized version that we're all going to try and drive towards.
Yeah, so we've had a lot of conversations about this, and the way I look at it is really dots on the horizon, right? So when we look at the future of EV experience, how far out do we really want to go, and where do we want to take the conversation to? So I think right now, I'm not sure if you guys have driven an EV before, but the charging experience is not the best. There's a number of issues with it. If you look at barriers to entry for consumers, it's like 4 of the top 5 barriers are all centered around charging and fueling your EV, essentially. So what we need to do is we need to do better, honestly, right? The consumers, the end users, the people, they deserve a better experience, and we really need to get there. The vehicles need to be telling us where to charge, when to charge, simplifying that process for us, consolidating payment. But it goes beyond that, right? So if we look at the next dot on the horizon, what else is the vehicle doing to support us? And at what point is the vehicle doing more for us than we're doing for it? So I think that's really what we're trying to get to and what we're going to talk about here today.
Fantastic. To level set us, though, I'm going to invite Ed to actually just give us a little bit of background on some of the consortiums, the standards, the things that we were talking about that are all existing today, but fall kind of short on some of the education that we're going to get into shortly.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about what we're doing. So there's a number of consortiums I'm involved with, like Vehicle Grid Integration Council, Peak Load Management Association, and Auto Innovators, where we're working together to try to look at how do we standardize the data, how do we start doing things like controlling the charging, right? The grid could be unstable if we throw it at consumers too quickly, right? So you need homes upgraded, we need transformers upgraded. As you start putting one EV in a local subdivision, that could take up all the extra capacity in that subdivision. So the utilities have anxiety. We have anxiety to how we get this accepted, and so does the consumers. So Kyle talked about education. That's really important today. But as we move forward with these consortiums, what we really want to do is help that transition and have the vehicle, the grid, become smarter so that it does it for the consumer. And eventually we get to the point where the products are managing the charging for them, or helping to stabilize the grid, and then offloading some of the need for upgrades. So if we can manage around peak loads, it would really help in this transition, especially in the short term. In the long term, as we get smarter, we'll learn as we go along the way.
Matus, we talked briefly that the problem that we actually just as well framed by Ed is actually very much in some cases a U.S. problem or an America's problem. Give us a little bit of background similar to Ed on where Europe's at, and then we're going to go from there to a broad conversation on education awareness in that future.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm always looking at this with the European perspective, and I think the European market as such is in a different state than the US market in many, many ways. It starts with the battle of plugs, right? In Europe, we have standardized CCS2 many, many years ago. In the US, we are still in front of the question, is it going to be CCS1? Is it going to be NACS? Right? But that's okay. Markets just develop very differently. Another aspect is the fragmentation, and I'm convinced that with all the funding that's now also kind of pumped into the US market, that fragmentation will start to grow similar than we already see it today in Europe. Just as an example, in Europe, there are around 3,000 charge point operators existing, and in the US, it's about 30. right? So that will change, and it's a part of that. Those effects that we're seeing is part of the data fragmentation with all these different nodes that are essentially adding to the problem. Why isn't a charge point operator not necessarily aware that he needs to fix the charge point, right? So there are many manufacturers, and the OEM just plays. They are just a piece of that entire puzzle, right? So this is why I think consortiums, alliances, and initiatives around charging are so important, right? Because that industry is just, or that space is just fragmented. It will not change. It will just grow.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to add to that. So, you know, in Europe, you see a lot more multifamily dwellings than here. We have a lot of freestanding homes with a lot more space and two-car garages. And so the market is really different for how you charge, right? So if you don't have an off-street parking, you really do need those you know, public charging environment. And that's led to a different approach. Where we have the problem here with failed units is some of the initial was there was some funding to put units out there where units were given for free to locations that were not maintained. And in fact, some poor maintenance guy for the building had to work on the one charger he had, and he didn't know how to fix it. So you're seeing the business morph, right? So now we're getting into charging as a service so that multifamily dwellings and homes here, and I think it's a model that's more appropriate in Europe or used in Europe, you can confirm that, where the multifamily dwelling can hire a service under a lease for maybe 10 years, where they'll do the installation, they'll do the maintenance, and they'll guarantee the operation of those chargers, and they know what to do with them, versus, you know, the original model, which was, we're going to give these away for free and hope it works.
So, Kyle, as the story that Ed and Matus just told us, right? A lot of effort being done on charging, a lot of effort being put together, but as you pointed out to us, right? Parking and charging are actually the same problem on two sides of a coin. Where does well, maybe that's too broad of a statement, but they're on two sides of a coin that are gonna converge into probably the same coin over time. How does Parkopedia actually get to a point, or how does the industry get to a point where we actually have clarity and truth of where charging is, the kind of charging, the quality of charging, and oh, by the way, is there actually parking for the type of vehicle that I have, whether it's by weight, by size, you know, by capacity?
Yeah, that's actually a great question. So there's a lot of different pieces to break down in there, but absolutely, like you said, there's a point in the future where charging and parking are the same exact thing. But today they're on different paths. And, you know, as a society, I'm not pointing anyone out in general. I'm going to, you know, generalize to all of them. The roles of CPOs currently has been putting metal in the ground, right? They're just going to try and put as many chargers as they can in the ground.
Tell
to be able
people
to have,
what that acronym is.
Charge point operators, right? So right now, as a society, you know, all the businesses are just trying to put as many chargers in the ground as they possible. That way people have places to charge. What we haven't been doing a good job of is giving the correct lat longs, saying if they're in a private parking spot that you can't get to, relaying the information if they're down or if there's issues, right? I mean, listen, I've purposely suffered through driving an EV to be able to see just how bad it is. And there's many times where I've checked with a CPO that said the charger's working. I show up and there's a cardboard sign on the outside that says this does not work. Next charger is 30 miles away and I have 21 miles worth of power left. So that's me going 10 miles an hour down the road for the next 45 minutes to try and get to that charger, right? Or longer than that. So what we do at Parkopedia is we're starting to combine those ecosystems. So we know where the parking is. We know when the parking is available. We know all this information. We're getting the information from the CPOs or from other sources, and we're going through and we're validating that information. You know, what we've seen is over 30% of the time, the lat longs themselves are wrong. And it's not off by 50 yards or in the wrong corner of the parking lot. Like, it's a building away. It's a half a mile away. And that's just not acceptable for consumers that haven't been in the industry. They don't know it, right? Like, we're all in the industry. Like, we know what to expect. But if you just went out and bought your brand new EV and you're super excited about it, and you wanted to go drive to, you know, your mom's house that's 2 states away, and the first thing you do is have to suffer through that, you're going back and returning it, right? And that's the problem.
Well, so this is a new story for you. I had a Polestar, and I went from LA to Vegas, and got to the charge point. And we're like, oh, this is amazing. We're going to have lunch. It's the very last charge point before we get to Vegas. We go to lunch. It's all great. An hour goes by. We come back out, and it's only 50% charged. And we're like, WTF? And then thankfully, there was a Tesla charger right next to us. And there was a guy in the Tesla, and he's like, oh, you should go look at a configuration for max charge. I'm like, what? Yeah, there's a thing called max charge, and the default from the rental agency for the Polestar 2 was 50% battery. So at 50%, it stopped charging. So we spent 2 hours hanging out, waiting, and then we had another 2 hours. It was like, well, none of us, and there was so many F-bombs, it was not even funny. It was, what was supposed to be a 5-hour journey was an 8-hour journey. Yeah. So, question, whose problem is it? I mean, it is a consumer's problem. There's no questioning that. But in terms of when I say whose problem is it, whose problem is it to solve? One thing that was super interesting was Graham from BMW yesterday said, present problems to engineers, and all they want to do is create more problems in trying to solve the problems. Let's get simple. So simply, who owns trying to solve that problem? I don't know, this is an open question to all three of you. Yeah, go for it.
So I tackle it a little bit from a different perspective. What is going to differentiate us OEMs in the future?
Not setting it to 50%, that's for sure.
Yeah, and I think it's the fact creating experiences where you don't need to think about these things, right? So, and everybody has a different perspective. If you would ask Neo, I mentioned that earlier, they would say, oh, our take on that is you don't need to charge at all. You just go to a charging station, swap your battery. Well, that creates a whole set of problems for them, right? Now, everybody has a different perspective on that, and that's good because that is what is going to differentiate us in the future, also in the charging world, right? So, and I think this is really key to create seamless experiences where you don't need the customer with the mental load to think about these problems. He just wants to go from A to B, and he wants to do that reliably, right? So it's our job, and this fine gentleman right here that I work with very closely on the product side, we are thinking about solutions. How can we take that burden of the customer that they only get to chargers that are absolutely reliable, that work with our vehicles, right? And the customer just doesn't think about this, right? For them, it's seamless. They don't have to deal with all these problems.
Yeah, no, I think perfect answer. But to elaborate on it, so today it's about education, right? Nobody educated you that the car defaults to this. And that's done for other reasons, right? So we're trying to protect the battery. The closer you keep the battery to 50%, the longer it'll last. So they default to that. And other people default to 80%. Some brands hit 90. And it's really charging at either end or letting a battery sit at the high end of state of charge degrades it more. So, but initially right now we're going to get into education. So that's today. We need to educate consumers on get them beyond their fear and not stick them in situations like you had. The next step will be machine learning, where we know the day they're taking a trip, they put it in the nav system, and we can automatically throw that switch so that we know he's going to have to get 100% to make his next step. Why make him go in there and do that? And then ultimately, it's really where the vehicle's intelligent enough to make those decisions. So, we have your calendar from your cell phone. We know you're going to go, you're taking a vacation to Vegas. The settings are, the vehicle learns that. They know the route. How do we optimize the charging, get it to the lowest cost, get you to the right stations where you can charge it the fastest? And then even control things like when you decelerate, when you, regenerate down a hill, and you might coast down a hill depending on what's going to happen at the bottom. So, these are decisions as we go forward. The vehicle is going to become more, smarter, become more part of your daily life, pulling data from your home, from your phone, and really understanding your behaviors and your likes and your dislikes, where the vehicle will adapt and handle it for you. So it's no longer going to be about education. It's going to be really about the vehicle understanding and the vehicle helping the customer.
So one of the questions that came up in yesterday's panel is this just prompted, and again, truly unscripted, this particular question, but it is within our agreed to guardrails, is intelligence, which you talked about, and obviously as OEMs very vehicle centric. But what about a world where the intelligence and the personality is about Kyle the person? And so I go to this car, or this car. So the question is the intelligence that you just talked about a vehicle-centric intelligence only? Is it a device-centric, aka Kyle's phone has learned all these, and when he or she enters into a vehicle, they immediately configure the vehicle based on that? Where do we sit at in that term, and where does the industry want to go in that turn? Obviously, I think the OEMs will have a perspective, but I would welcome Kyle maybe starting with you as a non-OEM. What would you like to see? Would you like to see a vehicle taking on the persona? Because again, a rental car, a Turo car, a car that you buy, a car that you rent, a car that's your spouse's or child's car that you're using.
Yeah, so this is an interesting one, and this is going to be off the cuff, and I'm not sure where this answer is going to go just yet. So my apologies in advance. But my immediate thought is one that's going to be really difficult, because listen, we have all these different OEMs. They all make different cars or different products, right? So we want a vehicle that fits our lifestyle, that is who we are. Like a vehicle is an extension of our personality. And you can't commonize everything from someone's personality to put them across all the different vehicles, right? So I think that the profile remains within the vehicle, at least for the next 20 years or so. But maybe we get to a point where you don't even own a car, and then that's when it starts traveling with you. That's my kind of perspective on it, but I think you guys are thinking it a little different.
I think we're already beyond that. I mean, we have the Connected Car Consortium. I didn't mention that earlier when I talked about consortiums. So that's been developed about device communication with the car and security. So part of that is developing an ultra-wideband technology where you can isolate a device in space within a fraction of a centimeter, so that we know, and it's secured, encrypted, that the device is approaching the car, the device is approaching the home, and whose device it is, and the complete profile. And that profile is portable. So that if you go and you have you're approaching your vehicle, and it's not your vehicle, you've rented something, it can still use that encrypted profile because the rental car company assigned your phone to that vehicle with an encrypted key. Now, all your data comes with you. Your head unit settings are there. Your passenger, because we know you're in a unique space within a fraction of a centimeter, all their settings show up on the passenger screen. The people sitting in the back get their experience from that they normally use in the rear seat of a car. So, a child. And then if that child has been watching a video and you made them go out of the house and get in the car, it ports with them if they have a device. And that could be a smartwatch, that could be a phone, that could be a tablet. So these technologies are already being developed. We're already going that route. And that's the key, because we can't be 20 years away. Because, right now these vehicles are more expensive, it's new and convincing. We have to have a better experience with an EV than you have with an internal combustion engine to get people to convert. So we are working on those technologies.
I agree on the whole experience. The portability is the part that I just don't know if I see it right now. I'm good. I'll let you go ahead. That's the part I love the idea. Yeah. I think it's great. I just wonder how portable it is for all those different pieces. When we get to a point where every vehicle has a screen in every headrest, and yeah, absolutely port in, automatically sync with all that stuff. But, are you going to be able to have my seat settings be able to port from a Toyota to a Ford to a whatever else? Does it communicate correctly in that sense?
Technically it's possible. I mean, we're all looking to do our unique
Yeah,
experiences,
possible,
so
yeah.
we're trying to differentiate at this point, but who knows?
Yeah, so that's where I get into the customization and your vehicle being a piece of your personality, right?
Yeah.
So adding a little bit to that discussion, I tend to agree with you. I think there are cases that are different. For example, fleets, right? So where a fleet manager that owns a bigger fleet is interested in the behavior, how does that fleet driver actually behave? So that ownership is between the fleet manager and the vehicle, not the driver and the vehicle. So that is already existing today, where we use data like that and create services and experiences on top of that, where fleets can actually benefit from that, right? So because tomorrow a fleet driver is driving a different vehicle than yesterday. So this is already reality today. But what stipulated your question is actually, and now looking really forward, is how does charging, for example, change when you have seamless experiences like plug and charge, where you have a certificate on the car and you pay, but now I'm borrowing the vehicle to my neighbor for 3 days. I don't want him to use my account, right? Or things like that. Or I have a rental car, but I want to use my my contract to pay for my electricity when I go charge? So I think these are questions that are coming up where the technology definitely exists, but nobody has really done or solved that yet. So I think that is a portion where we need to look into in the future on solutions where you can port your own contract into other vehicles that you actually pay for your electricity right on the way. So that I think that's realistic.
Kyle.
So this is really interesting. From a technical sense, this is one of the easiest questions to solve. That what we're talking about right here. The problem is nobody wants to give up the customer, and we've forgotten that the customer is a person, right? So Ford did a great job the other day. They talked about Becky, right? And I loved that they started talking about Becky. And I'm going to derail for just a second here, but I was having a conversation the other day, and there were so many people talking about end users or consumers or all these different terms that we use to desensitize people to the fact that it's actually a person that you're talking about. So the problem with putting that together, which is beautiful and should be easy to do from a technical standpoint, is that no one can agree on who owns the customer. Not that anyone should own the customer, but we've, over the last 10 years with the development of ecosystems, owning the customer is more important than selling the good. And that creates a huge problem, and that's going to be our biggest barrier over the next 10 years to these aggregated ecosystems.
So, ladies and gentlemen, this is the 7-minute warning. 7-minute warning. We're going to start opening it up to ask you the question, what's your ideal future for EV? Okay, so given that problem, that's a great problem to talk about. Interestingly enough, and just as a educational awareness, Graham talked about this yesterday from BMW. He's like, we have to do it. Have to do it if we're going to survive. And when he said the we, it was traditional OEMs, because he was now contrasting them to, we'll say, Chinese OEMs and, well, broadly, West Coast or new entrant OEMs. So the question then, given our education awareness going way back to it, how do we get there? How do we meaningfully have a conversation? And is it within a COVESA? Is it in somewhere else? Is it a government mandate? How do we actually get to that point such that we can do exactly what we just talked about? Movement of the wallet, movement of the profile between brands that are potentially, competitive to each other. How do we do that? And how do we satisfy the consumer, Becky?
Yeah, we can do that.
We can fist bump.
They won't even
Fist
use
bump,
the
right?
same mic. What are we talking about here? No, I'm
Yeah,
kidding.
I know. Go first.
The Becky thing seems to caught up somehow. All right. I forgot what I wanted to say. You go first.
All right. I mean, we this isn't new. I mean, we've done this before. Now we're looking at new industries that we need to work with, right? So I talked about people like the peak load management, et cetera. But we have the Society of Automotive Engineers, which we work together on. And for example, I'll throw out the example of vehicle to grid, or actually bidirectional energy exchange. That is all being led by the Society of Automotive Engineers, working with EPRI for the Electric Power Research Institute to develop the standards. So Richard Scholler in our team has led writing some of those standards with the Ford guys, with guys from Honda, with guys from Nissan, on how those communication standards will work. What's the data? And then so that we're all going to have a unified experience, so that if you buy a charger from supplier X, and you own a Wrangler and a F-150, they all work the same. So that one charger in your house now works the same for all the vehicles, and the data is standardized. So now we're looking at more industries, right? So it's how do we bring the experience further in that? What we haven't resolved is customers have a big problem with having multiple apps to control everything. So now we've injected the Wallbox app as how you're controlling your charging, instead of the one app for your vehicle. And is the one app for your vehicle the Ford app or the Stellantis app? So at some point, we need to work through, and I don't know if it's Society of Automotive Engineers or maybe it's an expansion of that, to come up with better standardization that's customer focused. Right, so we can do technical specs really easy, but how do we get the focus to the customer as part of that, merged organization?
So I think it's a combination of several things. One is legislation, because without that, it's going to be super difficult to create technical solutions that can really scale globally. And we see differences already in the different regions that are adding complexity on the OEMs, which is adding cost and so on and so forth, right? So I think legislation is important to a certain extent to give a clear direction and commitment. Okay, if you're building this very, very complex ecosystem, you are making the right investment. So just picking up the grid topic real briefly, where does that intelligence sit and who controls what? Does it sit on the car that's being controlled from the outside? Does it sit on the wall box? Does it sit purely on the cloud, but you are enforcing certain APIs that need to be open? Like, these are really, really big questions that have massive consequences, right? And then that's why I'm saying one part is legislation. The other one is when it comes to kind of the infrastructure, some of those things cannot be solved by legislation, right? And
Or shouldn't be.
or shouldn't be, exactly, right? So then it's up to partnerships to create the right boundary conditions to shape the market in a certain way. And I think the Next is a good example where now there's a massive move to that. There are other examples. So it's a combination at the end of the day.
All right. For fear of running over my 10-minute mark, I'm a minute and a half out from my deadline, but I'm just going to set the deadline now. So we're going to open it up. You can just shout. I think it's loud enough in the room. What would you like to see as your ideal future for EV? Now, if no one stands up in 1 minute, we're going to keep talking. But if you're willing to stand up, we will listen to you. Do we agree we're not going to?
We can just call on people.
You just want, we're going to do it that way. If you don't ask the question, you're going to hate me because I'm going to ask you the question. How's that? Is that what we're going to do?
That's what I.
So can I set the stage real quick?
No, no,
actually?
please do, yeah.
I'll be the first volunteer, if you will, right? So, listen, I gave this example when we were talking a couple days ago, and if we were having this conversation back in 1990, and you guys asked us, or we're talking about what is the future going to look like, and I gave you two things that I thought was going to happen in the future. One of them was that there will definitely be a flying skateboard. And the other one was that there was going to be a device that allowed instant communication all the way around the world, and that device was going to fit in my pocket. Which one do you guys would you guys have believed? Skateboard. Flying skateboard. 100%. Everyone would have told me flying skateboard will happen, and your nuts go to the loony bin if you think that FaceTime is going to exist in 20 years, right? So, when we look at this, really what happened, what brought about FaceTime was three different things that happened at the same time, in my opinion. I could be wrong. And that's going to be, one, telecom was an emerging industry that was changing dynamically. Second, the internet came along, right? And the third was globalization, right? The world was shrinking, and it created a need for something that did this. When we look at today, there's industries that are all emerging at the same time, and I think that there's going to be a really interesting merger between autonomous driving, AI, and ecosystems. And I feel like the vehicle is where ecosystems are going to truly start to have meaningful interactions in the physical world. So for me, what the future looks like of driving an EV, and they've heard me say this a couple times now, is I wake up in the morning, I go and I get in my car, taking a shower and everything, don't worry about that, and I say, hey, listen, I'm going to work. And the vehicle goes and it opens my garage door for me, it pulls out, it starts driving to work. It asks me if I want some breakfast, I tell it I want something for breakfast. It orders the breakfast from me from a place on the way, stops, picks it up, goes there, drops me off while I'm there. Maybe I'm helping drive the vehicle because I know that's a long ways away. Or maybe I'm just reading the paper, it doesn't really matter. And then when I get there, the vehicle goes, it charges itself, and it comes back and it picks me up at 4:30 when I'm leaving, right? So for me, that's what the future of EVs should look like. But for you guys, I have a feeling it's going to be different for everybody. You can pick different spots on the horizon. So we got a couple hands.
Yes, and please be mindful that there's probably going to be more than just two. Partha, we're not going with you first. We'll go over here. Go for it.
All right, I won't go to the ultimate. I'll just go to the baseline. And that is, frankly, that to get the acceptance, it has to be equal or lesser hassle from a range and a fueling time consumer out of your daily than current ICE vehicles.
So it has to be equal or better. Okay, got it. Partha.
Yeah, actually, it's the same thing. I want an exact ICE engine experience in an electric car, because the example that you gave me, the car picks me up, all that is heading smarts, that can be in any propulsion system. But I want the electric car to be exact same thing. What I mean by that is you guys talked about Europe, they have more street parking, street charging as opposed to US. Well, home ownership in US is about 60%, 60 plus, right? That means I have 40% of the car buying population potentially don't live in single family homes, so they have to depend on street charging, right? So I really want my electric car to have go to the charging station, just like gas station, go in, pump in, and get out.
So equivalency on speed and performance and others. Yes. Okay. Next up. Yep. You. Yep. You.
I'll say, we're all engineers in this room. We need to realize we are not the typical customer. We don't think like typical customers. We don't act like typical customers. So we've got to start understanding who the customer is and stop creating IT solutions that 70% of our customers don't know how to use. I love the concept of, it's gonna pick me up, but it's like the cartoon or the movie WALL-E. Everybody became this fat blob sitting in chairs with no visibility. I don't know that that's what I want for our future.
Sure.
So how do we simplify? How do we as engineers stop thinking like engineers, simplify, think like normal people, and don't create an IT solution that only 5% know how to work?
Okay. Excellent. Excellent. Yes.
I want to jump up at that and jump up at what you were saying, and kind of, maybe I'm jumping a little far forward in the future, but vehicle on demand. I don't want to think about charging. Let it charge itself. I don't necessarily, like, if I put in a route, like, have it come pick me up. Like, I don't necessarily even want to own the car.
Yeah.
Just let it be owned by someone else, and I can use it when I need it, and then I don't need to worry about parking it or charging it or any of those things.
Okay.
And then I have that seamless experience carried from car to car on my phone, or whatever the device of the future is that's carrying all our data. Maybe it's not.
Perfect. Yep. Okay.
I don't know how far forward I am. Maybe it's not a phone anymore.
Okay. All right. Yes.
I want the super app where I can kind of rent a car of any brand, of any make, whatever is out there, per hour for $10 an hour.
So you're already setting the rate. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. So I want to. So same kind of vehicle on demand app. So basically, we got autonomy, and we've got electric, and we've got a price set point, and we've got okay. I think next up, you. Yep.
I'm gonna kind of go very similar to what she said, but I want the charging to be available on demand. Like how we have the OTA for software.
Okay.
I want charging to be delivered as an OTA.
So you want charging wirelessly.
Exactly.
Okay. All right. Perfect. So EV charging wirelessly.
No, you're a Tesla fan.
that's
so,
what we're,
I mean,
that's what this
I'm
is all
talking
about.
Nikola Tesla.
Okay, so we got what? Yes. Okay, next up.
That question. So when I can get a charging infrastructure on the road while I'm driving, I could get
Okay.
All right, thank you. Just a quick response. So that development's already underway. We have Arena of the Future, terrible name, Arena del Futuro, running in Italy. So we have a mile of roadway. We're working with the A4035 Brembo to actually develop, in their case, being it's a privatized roadway, they want to put a lane in that allows you to charge continuously. Well, it's not charge, but run the vehicle continuously, save your battery, so that you can have a smaller car. City cars are more popular in Europe with a small battery, but you can go long distances because when you get on the highway, and the Brembo runs across Italy, the vehicle will run on that road. You will pay by the mile. And then when you get off, you run on the battery. So those developments are going on. We're doing things like testing the coil, the winner and the depth and the type of tarmac that had go over. But the efficiency is there. So, and we're running at highway speeds. So that's all, you'll see that someday if we can get over the hurdles of paying for the highway upgrades, there's infrastructure problems. But technologically, it's distinctly possible.
Okay.
It's very possible.
like how do I get that solar energy get converted on the road as a charging infrastructure? Like instead of putting a road on a gravel, you can put some other material. It will get charged so that it will provide.
So this is material science and charging. All right, great. Yes.
I'd like to still see customer choice in the propulsion. I think, plug-in hybrids are still undersold, and I don't necessarily mean you have to have ICE. You could have ICE for certain applications. You could have fuel cells. You could have your Mr. Fusion when that's it, right? whatever that is. But
Yeah.
I think it comes down to, we can add all of the improvements, we can add all of the high-tech IT that, 70% of us probably don't want, doesn't have enough. If it's not broken yet. That's the kind of thing. But at the end of the day, what they want is reliability. We have a power grid that we don't know how to sustain yet. There's still a massive version to nuclear power. There's problems getting continuous solar and wind. There's a lot of stuff. I think ultimately it comes back to, a hammer looking to figure out how to get a screw into a board, and to realize that sometimes you need a hammer and sometimes you need a screwdriver.
Gotcha.
That's the idea.
So customer choice on propulsion. All right, Sven.
I'll go back to your scale. I think we need to look past the EV and see what other sources of energy can we have that actually the same as
Right, same. Okay, so
nuclear power, whatever.
choice on propulsions. There was a question. Yes. Yep.
Yeah, so again, the question is, what do we really want as a consumer? What do we really want the future of EVs to be, right? And going back to her statement, right? It needs to be provided and it needs to be free. Google model. They're making money on a whole bunch of things, on where I go and what I do and what things can happen.
I wish there was a book
Yeah,
about
yeah,
that.
it-
I really wish there was a book about that. Yeah. Come see me afterwards. Yes, in the back.
I know car ownership in the future is going to be a little taboo, but maintenance and longevity, we're a generation on, maybe 2 generations on now from the early adopters of EVs, and we're starting to see some horror stories. So as you mentioned earlier, with fleets and things like that in the future, this auto service is going to come up.
Okay.
Cheaper, better maintenance for EVs in the future.
All right, we got one last opportunity for someone to opine. Yes, please.
Yeah, while advancing the technology, the car owners or the car manufacturers are forgetting that it is made for a human, not for a device. They're increasing the technology. With EV, I have to schedule or I have to plan according to the car schedule. I cannot schedule my own thing, because if I'm driving from point A to point B, I have to plan where should I stop,
Right.
what should I do. Instead, with the ICE, I can go stop on any gas station, fill it for 5 minutes, go to a convenience store, grab something, and come back. While in EV, I have to wait there for 30 minutes. I have to plan according to the car, not according to my thing.
Yeah. Okay, so similar comment to choice there.
Can I finish up with the famous Henry Ford quote?
Please do.
Everybody knows that probably. Henry Ford said, if I asked customers what they wanted, they would say faster horses.
Right. Yes. All right.
We all don't know the answer yet.
That's true. Ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you for being a fantastic audience and participating in this very radically different version of a panel. Thank you so very much. I know it was fun for us. But more importantly, I'd love you to give a round of applause to our panelists, please. Edward, Matus, and Kyle. They were great to work with, and thank you very much. As we said, this was no Q&A, so if you want to meet up with them, they will be around. They'll be around after here. I know there's not a break, but they'll be around outside, around, and then into the reception area. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so very much. Take care. I'm going to turn you back over to Steve.
Thank you, John, and thank you, panel, for that.